letter to me, but they would like me to keep them anonymous, so but I wanted to just show you what the context of the books is. So here is the letter. Dear Kate, these two small and rather battered books were written by J. J. Bell and form part of the Living History series to which both he and my grandfather contributed. Both books were aimed at a younger audience, and indeed I enjoyed reading them myself as a child. So, let's take a look. We have this red book and this blue book. Now I'm being very careful because they are very well loved, as you can see. Now this one is called Book 1, Jimmy's Storybook by J. J. Bell. Greek wrestlers on the front. I hope you can see that. And the book was published by George Philip and Son Limited. And the second book is Book 2, A History of Homely Things, again by J. J. Bell. Now I can't quite pick out. No, I can. There we go. Candle snuffers. Yeah, that's the image on the front. So, I'm going to pop the blue book there, and we're going to very carefully open up the red book. The pages are very, very delicate. So I am being very careful. So we can see that they were published in 1928. It says J. J. Bell, M.A., Senior Tutor of London Day Training College, recognised teacher of the University of London in the theory and practice of education. Illustrated with 4 coloured and numerous black and white illustrations. Now the person that sent these to me thought that they would be nice stories for me to read. So here's the preface. This book has been designed to introduce young children to history. Every part of it has been written in accordance with a definite purpose. In order to achieve that purpose, a certain method has been used. It is assumed that at an early age, children should be made aware of universal history before they begin a real study of their own country. They ought to know that for the civilization which they see all around them, they are indebted not only to their own country, but to all time and to many races. They ought to know that the past of which history tells is living today. So let us carry on. So that preface was written by J. J. Bell. Oh, and it says here, the succeeding book, which is this blue one, A History of Homely Things, has been written for rather older children. looks as though the preface is very similar to the other book. Okay, the contents are inventions and discoveries, the hunter and his fire, galloping shepherds and cattlemen, corn and canals, makers of iron, a Greek history book, Roman roads, Bede and the First History of England, pepper, books Eldon knew, gas and wool from Australia. You can see, let me show you illustrations. So this illustration says, an aeroplane above the park. So, I think I'm going to start. By reading, let's see, what should we have? Roman roads, 59. Let's go to page 59. Very carefully. Oh, we've got colour illustrations, of course, as well. 59. And there we have a bookmark as well. Here we go. Chapter 7. Roman roads. When anyone mentions the Greeks to us, we always think of a race of men who were fond of games and books. They like to play games in the open air. We call a good player of games an athlete. That is a Greek word. Greeks liked to be athletes. They also liked to sit together and hear history books and other kinds of books read out aloud. History is a Greek word. Greeks liked to hear poems recited too. Poem is a Greek word. They liked to hear dramas or plays read or recited. Drama is a Greek word. They liked to see and hear dramas acted in theatres. Theatre is a Greek word. Bible is a Greek word. It means book. So in English we use many Greek words. About games and books and the insides of books. But when anyone mentions the Romans to us, we think of quite different things. We think of roads. The Romans made many good roads. Some of the words that we use about roads are taken from Latin, which was the language of the Romans. We call a paved road a street. Street is really a Latin word. We measure roads in miles. Mile is a Latin word. The post brings our letters to us along roads. Post is a Latin word. The Romans had a post that carried letters. As we travel along our roads nowadays, we come to taverns or inns where men can rest and eat and drink. Tavern is a Latin word. The Romans had taverns on the sides of their roads. So, let us find out who the Romans were and what happened because of their roads. The Romans came first from the city of Rome in Italy. When Jesus Christ was born, they ruled nearly all the known world. They had made a great empire. Not long after Christ's death, they crossed the sea to the island in which you and I live, and began to rule it. This island was then known as Britain. It became a part of the Roman Empire. It was Roman soldiers that made the Roman roads. The Roman roads were straight and long. There used to be a saying that all soldiers were here, you would have been able to find a Roman road somewhere not far from your home. If you had got onto it and walked south for many miles, you would have come to the salt water that separated Britain from the rest of the Roman Empire. Then, if you had crossed that water, you would have found the long straight road beginning again on the other side, and you could have gone on walking along it till you came to Rome. From Rome, you could travel along the roads to any part of the empire. You could walk to Greece, then you could cross more salt water and begin walking again. You could walk to the country where once the iron-using Chalybes had lived, or you could walk to the river Euphrates and sail down it to Babylon, or you could walk to Egypt and see the pyramids, but it would have been quicker to sail straight to Egypt in one of the ships that went there from Rome to get corn for the citizens of Rome. Like the Romans, we are dwellers in a great empire. Great Britain is the centre of it. We cannot travel by roads to it. We have to sail in ships for days and weeks before we can reach its ports. Now, just to remember that this was written in 1928 when the British Empire was still a thing. From Canada we get corn, from Australia we get wool, from India we get tea, from Egypt these men died, their friends put up gravestones over their burial places and carved Latin inscriptions on them for other men to read. Of course, another issue about old books is that women are never mentioned. I think you kind of appreciate that. That's what you get in an old book. Anyway, people who came along the roads from other parts of the empire brought with them not only Roman ways of speaking and Roman birds and animals and trees, but also Roman ways of living. They built their houses of stone, put glass windows in their walls and warmed them in the Roman way. They did not have fireplaces in their rooms as we do now. When they built a house, they always planned to have at least one room with a warm floor. They made this floor out of small tiles, which they laid in cement. These tiles were coloured in different shades and were laid down in such a way as to make a picture. This tiled floor was held up by pillars of brick underneath it, so that if you wanted, you could crawl about below it on your hands and knees. Underneath this floor, the Romans made a mixture of hot air and smoke go. This moved round the pillars and made them black with soot. It came from a furnace. After it had warmed the underneath side of the floor, it went up small chimneys in the stone walls of the room and warmed these too. So, when Romans sat in their rooms that had warm tiled floors, their feet were never cold. A great many of these floors that Romans made have been found in our country, and in some places you can still crawl underneath and see the old soot still sticking to the pillars. The Roman way of warming floors is a very good way. We are beginning to use it again in our new schools and churches. Along the roads came Romans who liked to keep themselves clean. When any one of them built a nice house for himself, he built a bathroom too. He liked one with plenty of hot and cold water in it. In one place in the country there is a spring of hot water, which is very useful to some people who are ill. The Romans soon found it out and made a swimming bath there. They also made roads so that people could easily travel thither. Because of this bath, the place is today called Bath. Now, because I have a northern accent, I say Bath. However, if you lived in Bath, you almost certainly say Bath. If you go there, you will see the old bath which the Romans made. English people have built other baths there and use them in ways very like the Roman ways. But the most wonderful thing that came to Britain along the roads from Rome was the Christian religion. Now, also remembering that in 1928 Christianity was the prominent religion in Great Britain, and there was much less diversity here, and of course much less of an influence of other religions. So books like this tended to focus on Christianity rather than anything else. The missionaries who first told the Roman Empire about the life and death of Jesus Christ travelled by road from the Holy Land to Greece and preached there. One of them preached in Athens, close to the spot where Herodotus read out his history. This same man was afterwards carried as a prisoner on a ship from the Holy Land to Rome. His name was Paul. In interesting things from each other. Because of roads, they can learn from one another. Men can learn to live more comfortably when other men can travel easily along roads and teach them better ways. Roads have helped men to learn how to lead better lives in a Christian manner. Roads help people to do their work. They help you get to school. They help mother to get what she needs. Roads are a great invention. It was the Romans who first properly understood how important roads were, so they were the first who made a great many of them. In a great many places in our country, you can see the remains of them. They are very straight. Romans did not like twisty roads. They liked to see a long way in front of them when they were travelling. I think that these older children's books are very interesting to read because they reflect very much the kind of ideas from the time and how children were taught about British history. Okay, so I'd like to read this one too. This is Chapter 8, Bede and the First History of England. Let's start. This chapter is going to be about a very famous Englishman called Bede and about the history books which he wrote. But before we begin to read about him and his books, I must tell you on the first 6 pages a few things that will help you to understand how it became possible for an Englishman to write books. Bede is the first Englishman that has been mentioned by name in this book. It has not been necessary to mention an Englishman's name before, for it was not Englishmen who first found out long, long ago how to make a fire, chip flint knives, ride a horse, look after cows and sheep, grow corn, dig canals, use iron, write history books, and make good roads. It took a very long time to find out how to do all these things. They were found out by different people, one at a time, very, very slowly, and very slowly learned by other people who had not found them out for themselves. And when they were being found out and learned, there were no people called English, and there was no country called England. No one ever heard of Englishmen until long after the Romans had begun to make their wonderful roads. It was after the time when Jesus Christ was born that the Romans first began to hear of the English people. But the Englishmen that Romans then began to hear about did not live in Britain. They lived far away across the sea in Germany for about 350 years there. The Romans ruled Britain. Their soldiers did not allow Englishmen to come and live here. At last the Roman soldiers went away from Britain. When Englishmen heard of this, great numbers of them sailed over to Britain and conquered a large part of it. They brought their wives and babies with them. These men and women all spoke English. Because they came here and lived here, our country began to be called England. England was new then. It is old now. Of course, this is a very simplified way of looking at things, and not particularly accurate, but never mind. You and I are the descendants of the Englishmen, women and babies who sailed from Germany about 1400 years ago. They were our ancestors. Again, this is assuming that all the children that would have read these books in 1928 were all of a certain ethnic background. If they had not come to this country, you and I would houses. They did not warm their homes in the Roman way. They lived in dirty, dark wooden huts and warmed them by making a fire on the ground in the middle of the floor. Their houses had no glass windows, as Roman houses had. They did not make good roads as the Romans had done. They did not know how useful roads were. They could not read or write Latin, which was the Roman language. Neither did they know the Greek language. They had no books of any kind. Unlike the Romans, they were heathen. And there again, that is another very particular idea from this period when the book was written. They knew nothing about the Christian God and his Son Jesus Christ, or about the Bible. They worshipped heathen gods like Woden, the god of war, and Thor, the god of thunder. They thought that Thor often had a hammer in his hand. Some of the days of the week were called after these gods. They called one day Wednesday, which means Woden's day, and called another day Thursday, which means Thor's day. For about 150 years, the English in England went on worshipping heathen gods. During all this time, they were working very hard. They were often at war. They were conquering more and more land in their new country, and were always making new homes. They were slowly making the beginnings of England, which is your home and mine. They were building for the first time many of the villages and towns which we live in today, and were beginning to use for the first time many of the fields that we use now. Then a very important thing happened in the year 597. I think it was the most important thing that ever happened to Englishmen. In that year, they began to worship God and Jesus Christ and to give up their heathen gods. In that year, they began to learn how to do many other things, as you will see. The man who first caused this great change was the Pope. The Pope lived in Rome. He was the chief or head or most important man among Christians. It was one of his duties to tell people how to worship God in the right way. For years he longed to preach about God and Christ to the heathen Englishmen. At last he sent missionaries to England. Missionaries also came to England from Scotland and Ireland, where men had already learned the Christian religion. So Englishmen began to hear for the first time of the Christian God and of his Son, and to give up their heathen gods. But everyone went on calling the days of the week by heathen names, just as you and I do. And now I want to tell you in this chapter a little about Bede himself. He lived in England, when England was new, and when Englishmen had not known about the Christian religion for long. He wrote many books, not in English but in Latin. No one wrote books in English in those days, so Bede wrote in Latin, a language which missionaries taught to many Englishmen. Some of these books are history books. In them you can find the story of the Pope who first sent missionaries from Rome, and also the story of the missionaries who came from Scotland. These books have been translated into English, and you will be able to read them easily when you are older. Do you remember the Greek Herodotus, who has been called the father of history? Bede has been called the father of English history, for he was the first Englishman to write history books. If he had not written his books, we should know very little Bede, his grandfather, was one of the babies that were brought to England in boats from Germany. That baby must have been a soldier when he grew up, and must have been one of those who helped to conquer new lands, built new homes, and used new fields. He was a heathen. He knew all about Woden and Thor, but Bede's father gave up the heathen gods, for in his time there were Christian missionaries in England. When Bede was 7 years old, his father took him to a building called a monastery and left him there. Christian men called monks lived in the monastery, and the father hoped that his boy would be taught everything about the Christian religion and become a monk when he was a grown-up man. Probably the father knew that his boy would learn many other things about which he himself knew nothing. Monks were men who had decided to spend a great part of their lives in singing praises and offering prayers to God. In the monastery was a stone church. It was one of the first stone buildings ever built in this country in English times. Englishmen could not build it. The Englishman who caused the monastery to be made brought stone masons from over the sea. He brought them from a country called France, where many men still knew how to build as the ancient Romans did. It was from men like these that Englishmen first learned how to build with stone. They also taught Englishmen how to make glass for the windows of the church, glass lanterns for lighting the church, and glass cups from which to drink. All the monks of the monastery went together to this church 6 times a day to worship God. At night they all slept in the same room in separate beds. They ate their meals all together in another room. This dining room had glass windows like the church. When they were not in church, they worked hard. They ploughed their fields with ploughs that were pulled by oxen. They sowed and reaped corn. They thrashed corn and milked cows and looked after sheep and hens. For in this way they got food to eat. Some of them made flour out of corn. Some made bread in the bakery of the monastery. Some cooked food in the kitchen and kept the pans clean. Some worked in the garden. Others worked in the joiner's shop, making things out of wood. There was a workshop where monks blew up a great fire with bellows, heated iron red hot, and cut it and hammered it on an anvil in order to make and mend ploughs and spades with it. Some monks became great scholars. They could read Latin books. Some of them could write Latin. It was from these men that Bede began to learn how to speak, read, and write that language. They also taught him how to live like a monk in church, dining room, bedroom, workshops and fields. They taught him how to sing in church. Many of the monks had once been soldiers. Some of them were very strong men. They had cheerful faces that were good to look at. When Bede was 15 years old, he was sent to another monastery about 6 miles from the first one and very like it in every way. This second monastery was at Jarrow on the bank of the River Tyne. A man named Ceolfrid was the head or ruler of the monastery at Jarrow. The head of a monastery is called an abbot. Soon a great sickness broke out among the monks there. Many died, and there were none left was asked to travel about and teach in other places. Bede must have been taught singing by men who learned from John. When John was not teaching, he wrote books which explained the right way in which to praise God. When he started on his journey home, he left these books behind him so that Bede and the other monks of Jarrow might know perfectly how praise was sung in Rome. Where men knew exactly how everything should be done in church, these books were often copied out, for monks in other monasteries wanted them very much. Bede tells us that other things besides a knowledge of singing were brought from Rome to the monastery of Jarrow. In the church, pictures were hung up. Bede tells us of 4. One showed Isaac carrying the wood with which Abraham meant to make a fire and so burn his son as a sacrifice to God. Beside it hung another picture of Christ carrying his cross. A third picture showed Moses holding up the brazen serpent in the wilderness. The 4th picture was one of the crucifixion of Christ. All these pictures had been brought from Rome. Bede says that many other things came to the monastery at Jarrow from Rome. There came on one occasion 2 beautiful silk cloaks. I shall only write about one more thing. Abbot Celfrid once visited Rome and brought back with him a Bible written in Latin. Then he thought that his monastery had got so much from Rome that it ought to give something in return. Celfrid was like that. When he received a present, he always liked to give something back. So he had 3 copies of the Latin Bible, beautifully made. Bede, in his history books, tells us that 1 copy was used in the Jarrow monastery, another was sent to the monastery where Bede had been first put by his father. The 3rd copy, which I am sure was the best, was chosen